If you are one of the millions of Americans who uses Twitter, you probably have noticed how it has descended all the way back into a site that fuels misogyny, anti-Semitism, racism, and anti-LGBTQ hate. This is the lasting legacy of Elon Musk, who promised to make Twitter warm and welcoming to all, but turned it into a hellish town square instead, where it is cool to shout the N-word and other disgusting stuff in public. And if you have any doubts where Musk's allegiance lies, just take a look at who he spent Sunday watching the Super Bowl with. No, that is not Emperor Palpatine, Star Wars fans. It is Rupert Murdoch, sitting next to him in the box. Not only is Twitter a gross hellscape, but it has become the premier social media site for the incubation and birth of insurrections and coups. Look no further than January 6th, 2021 in Washington, D.C., or January 8th, 2023 in Brazil for real-life examples. Months after the attack on our Capitol, one Twitter whistleblower who risked her own safety laid out in disturbing detail how for months the company simply ignored her warnings about Trump's incitement to violence. Her name is Anika Navaroli, and she was the most senior expert on Twitter U.S. safety and policy team at the time of the attack on the Capitol. Since then, she has continued to call out the dangers of an unregulated Twitter. Here's her latest warning.
If we are going to talk about social media in the government, we need to talk about Twitter's failure to act before January 6th. I am here to tell you that doing nothing is not an option. If we continue to do nothing, violence is going to happen again.
Sadly, under Musk's leadership, Twitter has been eviscerated. He has fired 80% of the staff and left fewer than 20 full-time employees tasked with overseeing content moderation. I am joined now by former Twitter employee and whistleblower Anika Collier-Navaroli, practitioner fellow at the Digital Civil Society Lab in partnership with Stanford University. Thank you so much for being here.
It's wonderful to be here.
And happy birthday.
Thank you.
So let's talk about this, because to me, the idea of 20 people handling content moderation explains everything, because Twitter really has become a hellscape. The N-word might be the most used word on there now, as well as Nazi memes and everything. It's all back to where it was during its worst days. Talk about how it descended to that and whether it was already there on January 6, 2021.
I think that's a great question, and I think that, you know, racism and misogyny and all of these things that we're seeing on Twitter and social media are really just algorithmically amplified versions of the society in which we live. And we see this polarization playing out within our digital spaces, and we have for quite some time. And I think this really is an example of the ways in which we have been balancing these sort of ideas of free expression and safety, and the ways that we have been allowing hate speech and political speech and violence to fester in a way. And that came to a head in what we saw on January 6th.
Right. I mean, talk about how, I mean, as you said, it's a digital sort of representation of elements of society. How does the danger of a tweet, you know, we saw testimony during the January 6th hearings about Donald Trump tweeting, you know, Mike Pence doesn't have the guts. He doesn't have the courage to do what's needed. And you had Sarah Matthews, who was an aide in the White House, say that immediately led to violence. But how does that translate? Is Twitter the place where people are planning attacks, or is it encouraging people to take negative behaviors in real life? Is there some sort of connection?
I think social media plays every single one of those pieces, right? Social media is the mass communications of our day and age. And I think throughout history, we have seen the connection and the ties between hate speech and violence offline. This has happened through every emerging technology of mass media that we've seen, from radio to the moving picture to even broadcast, right? And we saw this on social media as well in the very early days with ethnic conflicts and folks like the Rohingya being murdered. We have seen this direct tie between speech and violence.
You know, on the one hand, Twitter, you know, I think about the Green Revolution in Iran. It was, you know, Twitter was such a necessity. Black Lives Matter. You know, it helped it to explode because you can get information. The right has accused Twitter of primarily spending its time muffling their voices. There was the PAB, I will just shorten it, moment that you were a part of in the recent hearings, in which you pointed out the president during the times in which they were claiming they were being muffled was Donald Trump. And other than the Trump administration, had you ever seen another political entity demand that things be taken off Twitter because they were offended by them or because they looked bad?
Well, I'll just say, you know, the PAB moment was, in fact, a moment, and I never thought that I would be the one to enter those 3 words into the congressional record for all time. And I think it's really just an example of how little we know about social media. You're asking about other instances, and I think it's really important that we continue to hear from people like me and then other individuals who have had the jobs that I've had, who can continue to share these stories so that we understand how social media works.
But had you ever had a request like that before?
I can't get into that.
Yourself? Okay. Well, and the other question, I guess, that I would then ask is, how, in your view, has Twitter materially changed in terms of the way it operates since Elon Musk took over?
I think it's not really about Elon Musk. And I think there's been a lot of reporting about, you know, how individuals have been terminated or how trust and safety teams have been gutted. And what I would encourage people to do is read the transcripts from the January 6th committee and ask yourself if that content would have come down before Elon Musk.
Yeah, I feel like I know the answer to it, but you are the expert, Anika Collier-Navaroli. Thank you very much.
Thank you.